Hello and welcome to another edition of the Roker Rapport Podcast, where Sunderland this week drew 0-0 at home to Doncaster Rovers. I'm your host, Johnny, joined by the usual host, Alex.
Hi.
Also joined by Neil.
Hello.
And comedian David Callahan.
Hello.
We're going to just discuss what's been going on in the world of Sunderland Football Club. We have a new signing to discuss as well. Bailey Wright joined on the season on loan until the end of the season. And we'll just get straight on with it. So, Alex, let's start with the new signing of Bailey Wright. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I won't pretend that I've seen too much of him play, to be honest. And I think given how Willis, Lynch and Ozturk have been playing, we may not see that much of him for a while. Because I think as a centre-back trio, they've been very good. But I'm sure we'll get onto that in a bit. But from what I've heard from the Bristol City fans is that he's not, well, obviously quite clearly he's not the biggest lad in the world, but he's quite a fearless sort of character, not afraid to put his head on the line and what have you. That's probably what you need for League One. Well, that's definitely what you need for League One. So I've been filled with promise, but I think we'll only see what he's like when we actually get a chance to watch him in a red and white shirt.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Neil? Is he similar to Jimmy Dunn with last year, where he was just there for cover, perhaps, not really expected to make too much of an impact in the team?
I think initially, I think he's there as another number, isn't he? I think if we had one or two kind of defensive injuries, we kind of lower. It's probably only Brandon Taylor and Flanagan at the moment. So I think he's kind of initially there as a number. But from what I've read, he's a bit of a leader. He was club captain. It's interesting that Bristol City are prepared to let him go, given his kind of age and the fact that he's been club captain. But I guess his injuries have got a lot to do with that. So I would like to think that if he does get in the team, he'll kind of hit the ground running and make a contribution, really, yeah.
David, your thoughts on this new boy?
Yeah, all the things I've heard about him is just like really solid and tremendously unremarkable, which is like Phil Parkinson. Do you know what I mean? It's like God loves Sunderland at the moment. Just seem to massively accrue loads of players who really want to do well here, but just aren't quite good enough. So he just feels like another one of them. I reckon. I'll be honest, he feels like one of those ones that you'll never actually see play.
Yeah.
So, like, it's pretty moot point. We probably will never see him in a Sunderland shirt. You might catch him warming up once or twice and go, he's got a bit of a touch on him. Look at him. Oh, let's get him in the... And then, of course, no, nothing happens.
So it could be another one of those, just blitz through everyone, takes a shot and it skies it.
Oh, yeah.
It could be one of those sort of defenders who just has a surprisingly good run going forward once or something.
Matthew Kilgallen.
I think what you made bring different to Jimmy Dunn, for instance, he seems to be a leader, so he might bring a kind of influence into the changing room, which I think we've kind of missed since kind of the likes of Catmull left. Kind of natural leaders, he seems to be that, and I think that's why he's been made club captain at Bristol. So yeah, he may contribute something off the field as well, but I think it's a suck and see kind of situation. Yeah,
He's got a really like rough Australian accent as well, so I reckon that would, even if like you're not playing, at least as long as like the opposition can like hear that from somewhere, that's all right.
Of course, he is only on loan till the end of the season, because who needs to buy players at this club? Okay, so we'll get straight into the game. Friday night's game, 0-0 draw against Doncaster Rovers. We asked Twitter the pros and cons of the game. So the pros are third consecutive clean sheet, clear identity of how we want to play, managed to dig in and withstand Doncaster in the first half, plenty of effort, got a point when we didn't play well. Do we have any agreements or disagreements on those statements?
I might, to be honest with you, I think didn't play well might be a bit harsh. I think in the first half, that it was quite evident to me anyway that Doncaster had done their homework and our weaknesses, because they set up a bit like MK Dons did in the first half, but just with a better team. And because they had a better team, they obviously were more dominant than our opponents last week were. A slight concern of mine now is that teams have found that if we are beaten at our own pressing game and our midfield is overrun by stronger midfielders of the opposition, then they can sort of dictate the play from that part of the pitch. I think that was quite clear in the first half, where we just couldn't get those sort of strings of attacks together that we saw against Wickham and Lincoln. And we just generally looked like we were being a bit like flustered. I think a lot of our passes were quite frustratingly cut short in possession. We were found wanting. I think Power struggled quite a bit in the first half. In the second, though, we seemed to come into a lot more. Again, like MK Dons, I think we got more of a foothold on the game. We adapted our play a bit. I think Doncaster got a bit fatigued. I think as teams do with playing like a very sort of like aggressive, insistent pressing game, the more they did that, I think as the second half wore on, the worse they got at it, because they were just getting tired and fatigued. So that's generally when we saw, I think, around the 60, 70 minute mark, that's when we saw like a better spell of possession. And I think Parkinson did well to sort of organise his team to withstand that pressure. But I think the objective now has to be overcoming that, because that's going to be a fault in the next weeks if more and more teams set up the same way and we don't find an immediate plan B rather than a second half plan B. Yeah, that could cost us more wins. So
yes. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, I think sometimes, obviously we're on this good unbeaten run, but sometimes I think you've just got to give other teams some credit. And I think the spine of Doncaster was really good. The two centre halves, I mean, Wyke was quiet compared to what he has been the last 2 or 3 weeks. And the two midfielders were really good at kind of harrying our two in midfield. So I think the first point is just to give Doncaster some credit. I've got a friend who came up from Doncaster, and he's kind of bemoaning the fact they haven't replaced John Marquis yet. And I think they are kind of one good centre forward away from a really good team to be pushing for the playoffs at least. So I think, yeah, give the opposition credit sometimes. I think on another day, I think the key thing for teams particularly come to the stadium late is trying to get an early goal, because the kind of opposition had therefore got to change the way they play early on. And I think that's been the key to these kind of heavy victories, scoring an early goal and then kind of we're just on our way, whereas if we struggle to break teams down, and I think that's where change off the bench, Parkinson changing stuff after 75, I think it's a bit too late. Whereas if we had a bit pace, something different after an hour, then we could maybe change it as well, yeah.
It seems to be a common theme with Sunderland managers where they make substitutions too late in the game.
Yeah.
It's not just Parkinson. It seems like every manager's done that, really.
Yeah.
Occasionally, Jack Ross would make a one in maybe early in the second half, and we'd be like, "What's going on? What's he doing this for?"
And if you go into a game thinking a draw will be a good result, maybe away from home against Portsmouth next week, then I get it. Keep it as solid and compact as possible, but at home, I think we should be looking to win every single home game, regardless of the opposition. So kind of make changes to kind of make things happen, really. So it maybe kind of indicates the lack of depth that Parkinson thinks he has as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think, David? Any positives that you want to take from the game?
Yeah, well, firstly, Doncaster I thought were excellent. I thought Ennis was great. I thought Gomez had a really good game. And I think what they did was they worked us out, because essentially we don't play through the centre of midfield anymore. Well, like George Dobson, his touch makes Duncan Watmore look deft. So we play. I think Parkinson's worked out that he's basically got 3 good players in Maguire, Gooch, and Denver Hume, and then O'Nien does a job as well. So you essentially play directly through the 2 channels on either side and try to make things happen that way. But Gooch was wasteful. Maguire, pretty much every delivery was poor. So I think that was the major downfalls, that we just couldn't activate the talent. But the big fear for me is if they can overload us in the way that they did in centre midfield, and especially in the wing-back areas, other better teams will be able to do that, and they'll be able to exploit it. If we've been worked out, the whole thing about Alf Ramsey never using the 4-3-3 until like the dying days of the World Cup, because he didn't want anyone to work out what he was doing. Like it's the same thing. If the tactics of Phil Parkinson have been worked out this early, I think maybe this unbeaten run may come to an end a little bit prematurely.
Yeah, we're just worried about that happening. It's like we've had a good run in January, and it's just wondering, okay, so when's it going to go back to the way it usually is? Waiting for that run where we just don't score goals at all away from home. Mm-hmm. But it's the life of a Sunderland fan. We're just expecting the worst at any moment, really.
But I think it's not without cause, and I think while it's very characteristic of Sunderland fans, like David says, to sort of anticipate something going wrong, I think any football fan in this situation really would. And that's not to take away too much from what Parkinson's done. Sort of like the Neo 2020 Parkinson era has been, a very successful one by and large. But my fear is that in League One you can get, like opposing centre midfielders who have pace and power, who are, strong and quick, and not necessarily good, but they're strong and quick. They have the physical sort of baseline primitive attributes. I remember when we played Coventry last season at home, that was when we really saw just how sort of detrimental that can be if you aren't adequately prepared for it. I think when their wingers and their sort of midfielders just cut through us like a hot knife through butter, we're conceded 5 goals through more or less exactly the same means. We were quite fortunate to get 4. I think 5-0 would have maybe have been a fair scoreline that day. that's not to say that's going to happen again. There's no wood I can touch here, but that's not to say that it's going to happen again. But all right, here we are. Hang on. Make this nice and audible. Yeah, that's not to say that's going to happen again, but we have to be wary of that risk. And if Dobson and Power aren't going to be as formidable against some opponents, and perhaps they're going to get if they get harried early doors, if they get dispossessed more easily than they should be, and the other team can sort of like play through the middle of the park once they're taken out of the equation, then we have to think, do we have players or do we have a system waiting on the back burner that we can use to make sure that we don't have to wait till the second half or wait till the team gets tired before we can come back into it? Can we just sort of fix it straight away? Because that's what teams that get promoted do.
Well, that's one of the things that mentions on the cons here on the Twitter that we have about the game. Nice way to move into that area. A lot of individual mistakes, poor passing, lack of pace and strength, very one-dimensional, and no plan B, as Alex referred to there. David, what do you think? Do we look like a team that might have a backup plan?
No, not at all. And I don't think Parkinson's capable of it. I think he was brought in to play very pragmatic, ugly football, and he's doing that, and it's actually working. But how long it'll work for, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, I thought Lafferty was, when he came on, looked really impressive. He seems like he links up play really well. So there is an outlet there. Fundamentally, we just don't have the strikers. We just don't have the strikers to that. If we need to rely on someone in a bit of a pinch, they're not there. We don't have anyone who is consistently good in this division.
Yeah,
Neil, what do you think of the idea of no plan B? Would you agree?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about the Tranmere game a little bit later on, but it'll be interesting to see what their pitch is like later on today, because I think the two channels from box to box is essentially just sand.
There's a lot of talk about this pitch being poor. I've heard this quite a lot.
Yeah, it looks awful. So it'll be interesting to see how Man United set up. I mean, obviously they've got a much better team than what we have, but it may be kind of that we go a bit more direct against Tranmere and try and take the pitch out of it, because I think it'll definitely be a leveler in terms of if we try and play down the wings. And but yeah, that'll test whether Parkinson has got a bit of imagination, and maybe to put the Lafferty up front with someone else, just to kind of make it a bit more direct. But yeah, again, it comes back to the squad. We've got kind of plenty of good pros in the squad, but we haven't got anything different to the 11 that kind of take the kind of unchanged 11 that we've had for the last 3 or 4 games. What more pre-injury would have given us something a bit different, but he's just really struggling for form because he's not getting a run of games. So,
well, one of the questions, we'll get onto the Twitter questions in a minute. One of them actually from David Clark did ask about, would he start Lafferty going forward? I feel like he's shown more in 20 minutes than Wyke has in months. So the question I'm going to put to all of you is, if there was any changes you'd make to the team for the game against Tranmere or Portsmouth, and what are we going for?
Yeah, definitely. I would change that. Absolutely. I think I like Charlie Wyke, but I don't think Charlie Wyke's very good for what we want to achieve. He's one of those players, I think, is in a similar vein to like maybe Nyron or even like Virginie, where he does something and it's not terrible and it's quite good. And it's not amazing, but it's all right. And we always want to cheer him. It's one of those where, like, I think the standard for what we generally sort of cheer Charlie Wyke on is a bit lower than everybody else. And I think that's because we sort of want him to succeed. Mm-hmm. But I look at him and I just think we could have a much better striker playing in that position. And I think if we did, I think that the benefit would be quite immediate and quite profound. And I think that's what you would get with Carl Lafferty. When he did come on, I think what we immediately had was so much more of a presence. That number 5 who played for Doncaster on Friday, I think while he had a very good game, Wyke made it very easy for him. Like, he just totally bullied him in the first half and most of the second when he was on. Like, every time Wyke would get the ball, all he had to do was nudge him and he got the ball back off him again. So I think having to man mark Wyke was quite an easy job, but then when Lafferty came on, it looked an awful lot harder suddenly. Like Lafferty seemed to have much more of a presence. He could bring the ball down straight away. Like, half the time it looked like there wasn't someone marking him when there was. Mm-hmm. And I think that's certainly someone that you need. I would start him just so that from the off we have more of a presence and more of a physicality about us. Because if we have our target man getting pushed over straight away from the off, I don't know Tranmere's defence, but if they've got someone capable of shoulder barging Charlie Wyke away from the ball like they did against Doncaster, which you don't need skill for, you just need, a strong shoulder, then I think it might set a statement for the rest of the game. Whereas if Lafferty can maybe jostle his way past his defender and either create a goal or score one early doors, then it'll be a very different game.
So is that the only real change you'd make? Would you just change White for Lafferty?
I wouldn't change anything else, to be honest with you. I would see how we get on against a much weaker side with a far better striker, in my opinion. I think given how that team's played against more inferior opponents like Wickham and Lincoln, I'd like to see if they can sort of maybe just revive that sort of performance against Tranmere just for confidence's sake.
Neil, what do you think of changing the squad? Any sort of changes that you'd want to make?
I don't think in that kind of set 11 that we have, I think only Lafferty for White is the only kind of realistic one that would improve us. I think a big thing about Lafferty seems to be a lot more mobile. So whereas White was kind of constantly marked and kind of bullied really off the ball, I think Lafferty has the ability to kind of create space for himself and get the ball into feet. I think he's, for all he's taught, even bigger than what White is, I think he's much better with his feet and a lot more mobile. So I think that maybe, I've had a little look at Tranmere's defence in terms of kind of stats and so on, and generally they're just not very good, either individually or as a kind of back four. So I think the more pressure we put on them and the more we mix it up, a bit more direct play, but also try and get into Lafferty's feet and try and use the channels, then yeah. But I think otherwise you can't change the wing backs, which are kind of a big part of our attacking play at the moment. You'd maybe want to rest one of the midfielders, but who would come in that would improve it? No one really. So and I think the defence, 3 clean sheets, you don't really change that. So yeah.
David, any changes that you would make? Anything that?
No, I every week I turn up and want it to work out for Charlie White. Like I just really want him to do well. He seems like such a nice lad.
It sounds like another Altidore, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like we want him to do well, but we just know he's not good.
He works really hard, and he just seems like a good character to have around. And and you look at videos of him playing for previous teams, and it's a different player.
I was going to say at Bradford, he scored 16, 17 goals a season, and he's in a much better team now. And
the same manager as well.
Yeah, and it'll be amazing if he gets into double figures. And it'd be interesting to see from his perspective what Bradford did different for him.
Was that League One Bradford you're talking about? The League
Yes.
Two Bradford?
League One.
Right, okay.
League One,
So I was going to say, because he did have a good season in League One, but he's played a lot of football in League Two. So I don't know if that's something.
We're talking about Kyle Lafferty there. He's one of those players who, I mean, I don't know if you want to say the SPL teams are at the same level as League One or above. I don't really know. I mean, maybe he's used to playing at a high level. He did play for Norwich, who were in the Championship and the Premier League. Didn't really do a lot there, but I guess he's just more experienced at a higher level. This is probably quite a shrewd signing for a team in League One.
Can he play for an hour? Can he play for a whole game? Has he got the legs to do that? How old is he? 33? Something like that?
Well,
Potentially.
I think I would be a bit disappointed if we'd signed a player knowing that we probably couldn't do that, given that we are a bit light on the feet in that department. Again, as David and I have both said, for all of Wyke's sort of all of the rapport he has with the fans and all that we want him to do well, he isn't very good. I think that's quite conclusive at this point. And Will Grigg, we're not particularly fussed if he does well or not, because we don't really like him that much. Comparably,
No,
but
he doesn't seem a particularly happy person.
No, and he's also evidently, for us at least, not very good. So
gorgeous blue eyes, though, eh?
Yeah, absolutely
dreamy.
Lovely. Yeah, I
lose myself in it.
Yeah, they're
That's
like
the Sunderland way, isn't it? Though?
like two gleaming sapphires every time he's on the pitch. It's just,
That's the Sunderland way, though. Players' careers come to die here, like Will Grigg.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's not that old. He could go to somewhere else, and I'm sure he would go to another League One club and bang them in, and
he would.
That would work against us, obviously. But no, I think I look at that, and obviously McNulty, he seems to be playing every 10 minutes. Well, he's in like 10-minute increments rather. Yeah. So I've got a lot of questions over his fitness. So that seems like quite a pointless use of a lone slot at the moment. If we're signing a striker knowing that his fitness is a doubt when we've got strikers who either already have doubtful fitness or just aren't very good, that is quite disappointing. Again, I don't, that's conjecture. That might not be true. But one thing I do want to ask, I do apologise, Johnny. Old habits die hard, being the usual host. But one thing that when I was listening to you say there, Neil, with would you change the team? No. Like, is that no because the team's really good and it's infallible, or is that no because there aren't other options, and that as well as a concern? You said there, I wouldn't change the midfield, and I know they could be tired, but
yeah,
there aren't other options. I mean that's true. You know, the issue I think at the moment is getting overrun by pace and power, and I don't think any of us can see Ledbetter, amending that problem. It's
and I think that's the problem with the way that kind of there's no reserve team anymore as such, because it used to be that players that weren't in the team had kind of game time to kind of prove that they should be in the team. And I think obviously Ledbetter hasn't played for 5, 6, 7 weeks now, and it's sort of they come back in at his age and kind of have an impact. I think probably his Power or Dobson or even both probably do need a rest because of the way that we play now, the up and down, and but again, there's not really the options on there. I think one final point on Lafferty as well, with games coming up against Portsmouth, Ipswich, and Coventry. Let's face it, he's a bit of a knob, isn't he? And I think he's the kind of player that if he's in your team, you love him, and he reacts to that. So in those big games coming up, that February is going to almost define our season. So if we can get him up to speed and get him actually in there for those big games, we've seen him in the past for Rangers, Hearts, actually impacting big games, and I think that just kind of fuels his kind of ego and kind of what he's about. So I would try and get him in ahead of kind of Portsmouth next week and see how he goes in those 3 or 4 big games coming up.
Are we settled on Parkinson at the moment then? We obviously were very, very vocal on wanting him out as little as a month ago. I mean, I don't want to say that we should keep him for years to come, but I mean, are we happy just to have him for a few more months at least, considering this run that he's on at the moment?
I think any club in the world winning 2 out of 14 when you want to get promoted, any set of fans would have reacted the same.
Absolutely.
But kudos to him in terms of how he's turned it around. It may have been just the fact that the players were a bit slow to kind of catch on to what he was trying to get across. I think that Parkinson's major problem at a club like Sunderland is you want someone to come in and just kind of like, the reason I like Chris Coleman, the reason why I listened to Chris Coleman is that he said all the right stuff. He just didn't get the results. Whereas if we had Parkinson came in, it was just kind of Jack Ross kind of having just woke up. It was all very dour and kind of we needed a personality, and I think that went against him as well as the results. Whereas we all know if a team gets results, it doesn't matter who the manager is really.
Oh, you can be as miserable as you want if you win games. Like,
exactly,
couldn't care less.
So I think it was just the results and his kind of demeanour just wasn't fitting in with the kind of narrative at the time. Whereas now, if we're winning games, I don't care. I'll never listen to his press conference like I did with Chris Coleman, but Chris Coleman didn't get results and Parkinson is now. So yeah.
Yes. So I'll move on to some questions now. Do we honestly think, this is from Keith, do we honestly think we will spend any money in this window? If not, do you think Stuart Donald will try to blame the fans' revolt for not being able to bring anyone in? I think he will blame us. So I'll comment on, I do hope the reason why we didn't get Liam Boyce is because Parkinson wasn't interested in him, because if he was and we couldn't even pay £150,000 for him, then that's really alarming of how much money this club actually has available. I'm hoping that it's only because Parkinson thought he wouldn't be suited to this team, because we need a goal scorer, and he scored 15 goals, I think, this season. So I don't really see what the problem is besides not having enough money to pay nearly £200,000 for a player.
I think that's very alarming, to be honest. I look at it and I think, that he's moved to Hearts for 150k, and while that doesn't explicitly say that Sunderland couldn't afford that, if you don't have to read too closely between the lines to work out that obviously we were in contention, then suddenly we weren't in contention, and then Hearts were with that fee to lure him away from Burton. If we can't afford that much money, given that we have been told by the ownership that there is money in the club. We've seen as much. We've seen a 10 million loan go in for what I presume to be the purposes of funding the club and its ventures and endeavours. If we're seeing the square root of nothing in this window, I just want to know why. I want to know where the money is. I want to know how much of what's been said overall is the truth, because it's very reminiscent of the kind of things we saw like at the end of the short era with Bain, where you would be told one thing and then the exact opposite was in fact true when all the dust settled. it's almost a little bit like the plot of Animal Farm, where everything starts out lovely with like the new revolution, and then we sort of get back into the old habits again with the old regime. Before the old regime was kicked out. I mean, I don't know. Again, it's a very poetic metaphor, but like that's just kind of how it feels. And ultimately, you know, I can't say for certain. You know, it could very well be the case that deals are being done as we speak right now that do involve monies being moved back and forth from our club. And if so, then, you know, there aren't many days left in the window, and we have a free agent and a loan signing. And as I think we've sort of gathered from this conversation, it's fairly clear going into the next very important games against the likes of Portsmouth and Ipswich that we do need cover in many areas of the pitch. And if we don't have that, then I just wonder what will happen if, say, Hume and Gooch both get injured. Let's say, hypothetically, they both got injured in the same game. That's an entire flank we've got with, in my opinion, no adequate cover.
What do you think, David? Do you think we'll spend any more money? You've got a week left, and are we expecting any new faces?
Yeah, definitely not. I think we're after Ollie Norwood, aren't we? I think we definitely do need cover for centre midfield, because it's quite clear that Ledbetter's legs have gone. I think we were sold a pup, really, to be honest, by Middlesbrough. So, but you've seen this before. You've seen owners who are trying to shift a club. They never put their hand in their pocket during these windows. The problem that we have is that we have a system that works for those 11 players and no one else to come in. And as soon as you get one injury, we're really stuffed. You know, it's going to be tough. I think if you think about it, who out of this team would you want to keep in the league above? Let's say we did get promoted. I think the only one for me would be Willis at the moment. I think everyone else would have to go. So I think you're right in saying it would be, even in the best case scenario, we're going to have a tough year next year. It's bad. It's bad, guys. I'm quite sad a lot of the time now. Is that coming across?
Yeah, it's worrying. I know that we're doing all right at the moment, but in the grand scheme of things, this is looking still very, very difficult. If we were to go up,
I've got an analogy prepared for this kind of. Are we going to spend? I'm trying to sell a house at the moment, and I'm certainly not going to put a 20 grand extension on it while I try to sell it. The same goes for Donald, regardless of what's been said. I can't see him spending any money, because essentially it's his money, reading between the lines. And I don't know how much it's got to do with the kind of, I forget what it's called at this level, but financial fair play in terms of what percentage of our wages is taking up the revenue at the moment. So it may be that we need to shift a few before we can commit to any kind of signings of any kind. That's what it seems like. The one thing about Boyce I would kind of add to it is, he's got a heart, so why isn't kind of the likes of Portsmouth or anyone else why didn't they just take a gamble for 150? Well, it's not a gamble, is it? As 150 grand. So
the only thing is maybe Burton were reluctant to sell to anyone who's in the same league as they are.
Possibly, yeah.
Because they don't want any other team. I mean, they've weakened their promotion chances now unless they bring somebody else in.
Yeah.
But it means at least that the other teams don't have that advantage of going up ahead of them because of Liam Boyce.
Yeah, well, ultimately it's conjecture, isn't it? You know, we don't know the inner workings of Liam Boyce's mind. We don't know why he decided against Sunderland.
He likes scoring against Sunderland, I'll tell you that much.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know, I suppose we don't know if the move really to Hearts was orchestrated by him or by a lack of finances on Sunderland's or even other League One clubs. Maybe, as I say, Burton didn't want to sell to you know, I dare say a fellow promotion rival, because they're not too far off the playoffs, really. They're an outside bet. I think you look at that, and a lot of that would make sense, but I think a lot of fans' perceptions at the moment will be coloured by the number of sort of untruths they feel like they've been told by the ownership. So ultimately, it may have nothing to do with that. We may have had the money ready, but Burton may have gone, actually, no, would rather he went to the SPL. It's up in the air, and I don't think we'll get a definite answer.
Yes, and with the way the transfer window is going at the moment, I don't see anybody else coming in. We've strengthened kind of in defence and up front, so we probably expect a free midfielder to come in who we've not heard of or hasn't played for about 2 years.
I think there's the mention of Garner from Man United, who I think can kind of sit back deeper as well as kind of play that forward role. But I think it's another example of how the club has neglected kind of their kind of networks around recruitment, in that we're a massive club in League One, So we should be kind of prime for kind of the likes of Man United, Man City, the kind of top 6, top 8, to say, actually, that's a really good club. We should be selling our youngsters there. They'll get a chance to shine in front of big crowds and so on. And there's just nothing there. There's literally nothing. And if you look at some championship clubs, they've got real good partnerships with kind of the top elite clubs in terms of getting Leeds, for instance. I know they're at a different level to us at the moment, but we should really be kind of working to say, right, who's the 2 young players that will bring in this season and then next season and then next season, and kind of create those kind of networks. So kind of other clubs trust us to develop their players. I guess clubs will look at Clark Salter and Jimmy Dunn and whoever else and say, well, actually, they were just huge failures, so why would we send a player there? But I think that's a wider kind of issue at the club, that we have no forward plan in terms of, yes, we're going to have to loan players for the foreseeable, but we need to kind of create those relationships to get the best loan players and actually benefit from them, really. So, yeah.
So at this moment in time, we still have Aidan McGeady and Will Grigg on our books. Chris Barker asks, should the club have still looked to involve McGeady and Grigg to make them a more desirable target for any new team? They've both been excluded altogether. They'll be nowhere near match fit. Could they at least have had minutes in the under-23s? So should Phil Parkinson swallow his pride and bring in McGeady to the team while he's still here?
Well, I'm sure he would have possibly helped the under-23s actually get some wins on the
they're having a miserable
roster.
season.
Yeah, well, they've had a miserable few seasons, really. But I suppose I don't know exactly how many senior players you're allowed in the under-23s fold per game, and I don't know what the characters of Will Grigg and Aidan McGeady are like. I don't know if that would be something that they themselves would be mutinous towards, or if they would sort of fall in line and just go ahead with it, if I'm perfectly honest. Aidan McGeady strikes me as someone who would see himself as, the best player in League One categorically, and maybe the thought of having to play in the Sunderland kids team would be something that would, put a really bitter taste in his mouth. Again, I don't know. I don't know if he would swallow his pride and do that, but I feel like doing that wouldn't be a way of making them more desirable to other clubs. I don't think there's any benefit of that. If anything, it would probably put me off. If you told me that, right, we've got this winger here, lads. He's really, really good. Also, has he played much? No. He's been in the reserves team with the under-23s. Oh, why? Oh, because we didn't want to play him in the first team. That wouldn't sell him to me. That would say, right, well, there's a real sort of question mark over him then if he's meant to be one of your best players. You're saying he's very good, but he's nowhere near your first team, and he's actively training with your youth team and playing with them. Then no, that wouldn't strike me as good. I mean, yeah, sure, he's staying match fit, but he's still training. I don't think there's a massive difference there in how much more marketable he becomes just because he's playing with the kids team.
What about Will Grigg, David? I mean, should we give him a chance? I know that a lot of people want to see him get a chance because eventually he might come good. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he shouldn't play for us again. Just get rid of him because it's not going to work here. And I think we need to stop trying to persist with someone who could come good, but it's not likely.
Yeah, I mean, I've got very little time. I mean, I back the manager on this. Let the manager pick the team, and also it's clearly there's some kind of destructive influence there. We don't need to sell Will Grigg to anyone. You don't need to sell Aidan McGeady to anyone. People know who they are. The records are really clear. They're not unknowns. They are 2 of the best players in this league by record. So you don't need to show them off put them in the shop window. Everyone knows that they're out of favour. It's the thing is about McGeady is that he's like the girl that all of your friends warned you about. Like some other manager will take a chance on him, despite how disruptive he is, and he'll go and spoil that dressing room as well. Because all managers essentially are sort of quite big-headed and think, no, I'll change him.
Mm-hmm.
I'll settle him down and he'll be brilliant for me. I think it's the same with Will Grigg. There's clearly something going on behind the scenes. He hasn't settled at all, and it maddens me that we've spent this amount of wages, this amount of transfer fees on these players, but it was so detrimental to the group to bring in disruptive influences now. You know, I genuinely think that out on the pitch on Friday, they were all genuinely actually fighting for each other. And that's one of the reasons that we've had this run, is that you've got a committed, solid, small squad here. I just wouldn't bring either of them in. And you don't need to. You absolutely don't need to.
I think at this level as well, as soon as you say McGeady's not going to be featured, there'll be a string of clubs that'll take them, but they'll wait till the very last minute and offer peanuts in terms of whether they're going to... I mean, let's face it, anyone that comes in and says, right, we'll pay 25% of his wages, it's better than paying him 100% of his wages if he's not involved. So he will go, and Greg may go, probably will. But again, we'll save a little bit, but not. We'll have no one wanting to say, oh yeah, we'll pay a fee for any of them, or and that's maybe where the club's dropped a bollock a bit in terms of kind of how yes, it was good to be transparent about McGeady, but at the same time, again, clubs around the country are thinking, yeah, we'll take them, but we'll wait until the 31st of Jan and get them at cut price and go from there. And again, it's a detriment of kind of where the club is at, that other clubs can do that to us.
Yeah, I mean, look, we had a whole Netflix documentary about how sort of like turgid and how disastrous our financial state has been over the past X number of years. I think any club, you know, looking to garner a bargain out of Sunderland would do exactly that. You know, I think we're a very easily targeted club for that. It's like, right, okay, well, yeah, we would quite like Aidan McGeady, but rather than actually paying something substantive for him, why don't we just wait until you're desperate? Because you will cave in and you will, you know, take peanuts from us to get him off your books. And I think we absolutely would. And it's not a huge concern of mine. I think in the grand scheme of it, I think ultimately, as you say, Neil, we're just better off without at this point.
Yeah.
Should we read anything into Tom Flanagan not being included in the squad on Friday? This is from Mark Wood. Parkinson said he went with Bailey right as he can cover 3 positions. But surely you'd think Flanagan would get the nod above Conor McLaughlin. So should we read anything into Tom Flanagan not being included?
I'm going to be honest, I didn't realise he wasn't on the bench.
That's all you need to know, really.
Yeah, I mean, if Parkinson's come out and said that, then you've got to kind of respect that. He's signed Bailey Wright for a reason. I know Flanagan was struggling with a shoulder injury, and I think the referee stamped on his head at the same time. So whether he's
that did happen, yeah.
So whether he's still kind of suffering from that injury a little bit, and Parkinson didn't want to risk that, but yeah, Flanagan's out of contract, isn't he? I don't think he's going to be here, whether it's League One or Championship next season.
No.
So
I don't think. I think he would. I can't imagine he's on big money, Flanagan. I think they'd probably keep him around rather than not, because of like he can cover. He's not spectacular, and he's had some dodgy games, but I think on the whole, under Parkinson, he has been quite good. You know, when I've seen him, I've been quite impressed, and I think he's a solid option to have. You know, as a utility player in a squad that is quite devoid of options. I think it would be quite daft to get rid.
Yeah. Well, one player who I would get rid of, Johnny Young, is asking this question. But personally, we're going to move on to Duncan Watmore, and this is a player who I would get rid of. He's been injury prone his entire career. He's been here nearly, I think it's 7 years now. Mm-hmm. And people keep saying, "Oh, well, when Watmore comes back, you know, you'll breath of fresh air in the team. He'll, you know, revitalise the squad going forward." And he gets injured, and it keeps happening. And we've been saying the same thing ever since he signed for us. It's been the same old story of Watmore will come back, you know, still got to come back. And Johnny Young's asking, is he finished? He missed his peak development years through injury, or does he just need more time? So you know my thoughts on it. So should we get rid of the opportunity that we can?
I just want to say I met Duncan Watmore at the Fringe this year. He was up. I met him in the Performers Bar, the Loft Bar at the Gilded Balloon, and he is the kindest, nicest gentleman. Honestly, he was so lovely, and he spoke very, very highly of Sunderland. And he's one of the most fundamentally decent people that I've ever had the pleasure to meet. He's such a credit to his family and this club.
Yes.
And yes, I do think we should get rid of him.
Yeah, he graduated on the same day as me at Newcastle Uni. Fun fact. We were somehow in the same sort of graduation class. So there we go. So he's a nice lad, you know, he's a good lad, and he's obviously switched on. He's got a degree and everything, but it still doesn't take away the fact that he's just, he needs to go. He needs to go.
Yeah. I think if if he wasn't out of contract and I think he's out of contract this summer, I think.
Yes.
It's kind of how do you justify giving him another contract? That's the issue. Whereas if no one was going to pay a fee, you'd kind of, because he's such a good guy and because he's obviously a positive influence, you'd kind of keep him around. I don't think he's finished altogether. I think he'll kind of find a club and he'll find a club that give him a kind of position of his own. I think at the moment, the way that we play, and he doesn't really fit. Interesting, I was talking to a few kind of sports scientist friends of mine and about his injuries and kind of, he's always been this kind of player that runs in straight lines. He always kind of, he's that direct that you don't see him jinking and turning like Gooch does, for instance. And talking to a few sports science friends, they were saying maybe because of his injuries, he physically can't do that kind of type of turning and that kind of.
Can't turn left.
Exactly. Yeah. If he turned left, he'd just go around in circles. Kind of
his
thing.
Injury stop him from putting his head up as well, does it?
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, he's got his deficiency. Let's remember, we signed him from. He was at Man United, then we signed him from Altrincham. So it wasn't that he came direct from Man United. He kind of started well for us. He was kind of, his raw pace was kind of unique, and I think the higher you go up the echelons of the leagues, the pace gets even more important. So at the time, he was that credible option, particularly off the bench, whereas now he's slower. It's perhaps a different game to what it was, but I think he will go on and get a decent contract somewhere and kind of prove himself to an extent. Yeah.
Is he one of the higher earners at the club?
Oh, definitely.
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the only one with with a contract signed back when we were like a Premier League team, wasn't he?
Yes. So he probably is on a significantly higher wage than some of these other players. And again, for a player who is a bit part role at the moment, it's worth getting rid of the highest earners at any chance that we can, because we clearly don't have a lot of money. So anything that we can get, we should really go for it. Would you see him playing in another League One club, though?
I think so. Yeah, the right one.
Okay.
Bit of a dilemma though with Watmore though is that I think, I mean, again, I don't have the stats handy and this may be guesswork, but I've heard that his wage is 18, 19, 20k a week, which is fairly obscene for League One. You know, I mean, obviously it's not quite like Oviedo's or what have you, but that's quite a lot. If you did somehow get rid of him this January, which I think is quite remote, but let's say that you got rid of him altogether, like you sold him to someone else, you've then got 20k freedom on the wage bill. Can we then, in the short time we've got, reinvest in two wingers to provide adequate cover and also be good? Could we do that? Or are we better off persisting with Watmore, who perhaps is overall underwhelming, but is still cover for the likes of who we have on the wing right now? You know, do we persist with Watmore and his big wage that doesn't really justify his performances at all? Or do we hypothetically get rid and then somehow bring in two wingers to replace?
It's far too risky, and he's developed such a reputation of being injured. I think it's too much of a risk to keep someone who, you know, on his day, whenever that is, he can have a decent performance, but it's not often enough, and it's just too much of a risk, I think, to keep someone who you don't guarantee is going to play. He'd probably get another injury in training, for all we know, and then it'll be back to square one.
Could happen.
I mean, it's like our only player with pace, and we've just talked about for 40 minutes about how we desperately need pace in this side. It's like getting rid of the one player who can do that.
I'd say while he's here, use him, but I think don't renew his contract.
Yeah.
I think while he's here, yes, keep him going, give him play at any chance he gets. But as soon as that contract expires, don't look to renew it, because we don't want to have another situation of this happening again. So
I'm going to miss him, though. I'm going to miss that thing, you know, where he gets the ball and just runs directly at the goal, regardless of what's in front of him.
Yes.
So, I've got a lot of time for it, guys.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm just looking at his stats here. Since 13-14 season, he's played about 85 first-team games. So in kind of like 7-8 years, he's playing about 10 games a season. If he wasn't a lovely lad, I've never met him, but you can tell he's a lovely lad. If he wasn't, you'd just be like, get rid.
Yeah, that's Abu Dhabi form, that.
With him. But yeah, to play 10 games per season on average says it all, essentially.
That's wow. Yeah, that is wow. Didn't think it was that bad.
Yeah.
Dear me.
He's played more games in Premier League 2, i.e. kind of when we're in the Premier League in the reserves, than what he has in any other competition for us.
Again, scoring for fun in that sort of level, and then he comes and plays for the first team, and he does have an eye for goal sometimes.
Yeah.
But
he's still only 25. It's incredible that he's still only 25.
has he actually ever played as striker up for Sunderland?
I was about to say that, to be honest.
He scored. Didn't he play for striker as a striker?
In his youth, he was always a striker. As in when he was at United and Altrincham, he was always a striker. That's always what he was.
And he hasn't done that in the first team for Sunderland, really.
Not really.
It's like maybe he's not a winger. I think he's not supposed to be. I think he's supposed to be a striker, and we don't play him in the position that.
Well, he never trained as one. He was always a striker. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe you could alleviate the issue of having not him having to turn left if he just played up front as like a poacher. If he just ran onto the end of a loose ball every time. That you don't have to turn for that. You just run into it.
At the same time, when he has got chances, is his finishing good enough to be a?
The one time he really played as a striker, the one occasion in this division where he's played as a striker this season was against Tranmere, when I think Grigg of all people played him through. And then he found the far left-hand corner. It was a really good finish. It was like a really tidy finish. Oh, yeah. I mean, he's not going to set the world alight, but you don't need to in League One in the grand scheme of it. It's all relative. If you can replicate that every other game, then that constitutes a good League One striker.
I think it's too much of a risk now, though, because if we did try that, played him up front, and then it didn't work, it would be like, well, what did you do that for? That was a stupid decision. So I think now it's. Do we want to take that risk? We're not miles ahead of other teams where we can take risks like that. So I'm not sure if it's worth trying it.
Playing him and Lafferty up top, have like a
I was
really
going to say
weird Quinn Phillips dynamic going on.
Something like that against Tranmere next week, if the pitch is as bad as what everyone's saying, to kind of just to change it up a little bit. And my worry with Watmore is if he does go, he actually does well somewhere else, and he's a lovely lad who also will be doing well somewhere else. That would kind of really grind my gears, but yeah.
Now that you've said it, it's definitely going to happen. So
at 25 as well, he's kind of he's not 30, he's not 31, he's 25-year-old still. So, but good luck, lad, regardless of what happens, because of the character.
But you would hate it if he went somewhere else and did well.
Yeah, he's one of those players that wouldn't get booed though if he came up against us. Would cheer him, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
One last question from Daniel Horner. This is a question that I think we've answered, but we'll answer it again. Dan Horner, are the panel concerned that we don't seem to have a plan B for when teams stop us from playing, like in the first half against MK and the same against Doncaster? Categorically, I think we all say yes, we are concerned about that, very much so.
Very much so.
Yes. So we now have 2 games during the week. One of them is against Tranmere, and the other one is against a team who was a thorn in our side last season, Portsmouth. And Portsmouth, however you want to pronounce it, I always say Portsmouth. I think it's incorrect.
I don't like that. I think you need to stop saying that.
Yeah. I say Bournemouth as well.
You can pack it in like.
Sorry, Portsmouth fans. There you go. I said it correctly there. Anyway, Tranmere first. So we'll play them on Wednesday night. Let's have your predictions for this game. Tranmere are struggling, but Sunderland, surprisingly, not surprisingly at all, have a very bad record down there, supposedly. So are we going to win this game or not?
I think the pros are that Tranmere has had a very busy schedule of late. The kind of extra time game against Watford that they came out on top of, Man United later today, which won't go to extra time, but kind of I imagine they'll be right up for that, and they'll kind of create the energy and expand the energy around that. So I think, I keep saying it, but the pitch is going to be a leveller, I think. And I think my only worry about Tranmere, we should go there and beat them comfortably. But my only concern would be kind of how that pitch levels out the game, really, more than anything else. The fact that it's Wednesday, I know it's not ideal for our fans that have booked accommodation and so on, but it gives us that extra day to recover from Friday to Wednesday as well. So if we were leggy on Friday, if that was an issue, then we certainly shouldn't be on Wednesday. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think, David?
Oh, yeah, we should go and smash them, really. But, as you say, I think the pitch is going to be a massive problem. What's, does anyone know our XG at the moment?
It's quite good. Compared to last season's, it was quite good, because I remember that was like a stick to beat us with last season. Sunderland, you're fourth, but look at your XG.
Yeah.
Walsall's is better. Screw you. That was pretty much how it went.
Right, okay. Because our chance creation on Friday night was pretty abysmal.
Oh, yeah. But I think that's quite anomalous to what we've seen recently.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I want to say like a sort of confident 3-0, but I think we might just win 1-0. I think we'll keep a clean sheet.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably a 1-0 win. I think we'll be what we'll probably get. We'll put them away and get 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But I mean, they are fourth bottom as far as I'm aware. Yes, they're third bottom in the relegation zone. So that is one team that maybe we could score more than one goal against.
Yeah.
I think that early goal, if we get an early goal, we should see it out. The longer the game goes on, the more it may be difficult. But
Isn't it nice watching other teams collapse? What a treat that is.
What you mean,
It's
like
quite
Wickham?
cathartic, isn't it? Yeah. It's
Really fun when you've got them on the ropes.
yeah,
Really great.
it's
I
great.
think it also
fantastic.
kind of identifies how poor this league is as well,
Yeah.
in terms of kind of no one's. It looked as though Ipswich and to an extent Wickham were just going to fly away with it. And then even Rotherham, they were flying. They got beat yesterday. So I think if we win our games in hand, we're kind of 3 points behind top, which is mental considering how much whinging we've done this season. But
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just wide open. Like the teams towards the top are the ones that don't have games in hand, and the teams like in our position around the 5th, 6th, 7th mark don't have games in hand. So like I think it's impossible to call. I mean, I can see Wickham really falling away because I just couldn't believe when we played them at home that was the team top of a division, of any division that we were in with them. It was just amazing how crap they were. But no, looking at Tranmere, to get back to that, I mean, look, the only concern I think any of us should have, and to call it a concern, it's as well is quite rich. I think it's a very trivial one. Is that pitch? I mean, look, yeah, it's a bit sandy, it's a bit torn up. We've played on torn up pitches before. We know what the consequences are when the pitch isn't pristine. The ball, it might have a bit too much traction. It might be a bit harder to move across the ground, but we're aware of that. We can adapt and we can adjust to that. At the end of the day, of course we can. You apply a bit more force on the pass. You lift it a bit heavier when you're kicking it. If you've got more quality, which we definitely do, that should just shine through regardless. I don't envision anything less than a 3-0 win, just given I know how good we are. I mean, I'm not saying that Tranmere are awful. I'm just saying that Phil Parkinson's bad Sunderland team beat them 5-0.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Yeah.
like, and that was during the 2 wins from 14 drought. That was 50% of all wins we got in that time.
Yeah.
But like that they were just so bad. Like I remember watching, and I mean even like the second half when they were tired, I've never seen a team defend so poorly. Like Luke, I was about to say Luke Maguire. Luke O'Nine's diving header that he got in for the 5th goal, where he was about a light year away from anyone marking him, was just quite incredible. You should never be allowed to have a diving header in the 6-yard box, but it's
I was going to mention that when we talk about Doncaster, but the fitness, I think, of our team at the moment is just strikingly kind of MK. I was down Milton Keynes as well, and you could just see in the last half an hour how kind of at it we were compared to MK Dons and Doncaster as well. So you'd like to think that the fact that Tranmere has had this big game today and then an extra time game last week, that we should kind of, if it does kind of go into the second half goalless, that we kind of just smash them in the second half essentially.
Yeah.
But paper towel dispensers in the away end, because there's that much seagull feces in the away end. So anyone going, you've got that to look forward to. Take some wet wipes, take some antibacterial spray, whatever. It's going to be great.
Well, there's nothing worse than a 1-0 loss while you're getting defecated on by various different seagulls. Is there?
Welcome to League One football. Yes. So we all going for a Sunderland win in that area.
Quite I mean, maybe not the prettiest, but a very confident one, I think.
I just remembered coming out of the Wickham game, I saw a little boy wearing a Wickham shirt crying, and I genuinely thought to myself, yes.
Okay, and next weekend it is Pompey away. So we've got 2 games this week, and Pompey is the big one, really. Are we expecting a potentially a win there, or?
I think getting a draw there, as well as depriving Portsmouth of 2 more points. I'd take 4 points out of these next 2 games for sure. Yeah. Especially with Coventry and Ipswich at home coming up. I don't think we can get too greedy, and I think coming out of the stadium on Friday, there was a bit of disgruntlement. We're not going to win every game this season. We need to kind of think, right, which are the games that are acceptable to draw. And if we go to Portsmouth looking for a draw, I can perfectly understand that. If we win, great. If we get beat, I mean, it wouldn't be abnormal to get beat off Portsmouth.
No,
under the
we're
conditions.
quite used to that, aren't we? But we won earlier in the season against them, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're on the same points as us, and they have also played the same amount of games. So it is pivotal that we don't let them beat us, because we need to keep them behind us. So ideally, Sunderland should look to get the win against Pompey, but they seem like one of those teams that pick up near the end of the season. I think they probably will be another team who's still around this area, around the playoff positions by the end of the season. So I don't know. I don't think it'll be as easy as Wickham, for example.
Oh, definitely not. I think Portsmouth are going to be one of those teams. I think they're a team, really, who, without perhaps as dramatic a decline when we sacked Ross and appointed Parkinson, are a team that are in a very similar position where they had a dodgy start. Like, they really didn't get off to a good one. I think a lot of those fans wanted Kenny Jackett out, and then he turned it around and he pulled it back. You know, very similar to Parkinson. I think almost.
Is he still there?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, he had like a really bad start. Like, I think
He did, yeah.
that 2-1 loss coincided within that really bad start and was possibly a catalyst. But he's another manager, much like Parkinson, who's sort of pulled it back from a position where maybe many of the fans were probably sick and tired of him. I mean, I don't know, maybe winning the illustrious Checker Trade Trophy bought him some time, you know, the git. But yeah, I think they're looking at this league now thinking, right, we've got quite a good team here. We're in decent form. Nobody else has taken this league by the scruff of the neck. We need to look at Sunderland at home and think, right, if we beat these, we are in a much stronger position physically and well, not physically, but literally and sort of like psychologically to go and maybe challenge for the automatics. They'll be thinking that. They've kept their squad from last season that did very well. You know, it finished fourth, largely intact. Obviously, they got rid of the likes of Jamal Lowe, but then they brought in John Marquis from Doncaster. So, you know, there's always the potential for goals in that team. I don't really know how he's got on, to be honest. I don't know if I don't think he's set light, has he really?
I don't think he's been great. No, I think their biggest miss was the lad at the back. Was it Matt Clark?
Matt Clark, yeah.
He went to Brighton and now at Derby on loan.
Yeah.
Because I think they were solid. Him and Burgess were kind of like a solid back two. So I think that's where we need to get in amongst them in terms of to test that defence.
I think one player we should be more aware of Pompey actually is Ronan Curtis. He's a good player.
Well, he's the one that stayed, wasn't? Well, no, he
scored there. He's their top scorer with 10 goals, 1 assist, and Jean Marcus isn't even in the top scoring list. So,
well, it's not great, is it?
Yeah,
But
he hasn't done too well at all. And also Ollie Hawkins, who the 6'6" striker that they have. If he comes on, I'm worried for the corners, to be quite honest.
He plays centre half sometimes as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. It's very strange. He plays centre back at times just because he's tall.
Yeah,
nice.
It's very weird.
It's I don't know, but I think if we're looking at that game, I've got to think they're a team who I think have a very similar mentality to us at this point in time, arguably an identical one. And given that they're the team at home, they're thinking. I mean, I don't know if we're their next game or if they play a game midweek as well, but. Regardless of how that goes, I'm thinking, right, Sunderland, you know, this is a team that we've got, League One beef with. They probably wish it wasn't. I mean, deep down, they probably wish that we were both in a different position, of course, given how dizzy the heights we used to be at were. But, you know, we're two fallen giants scrapping out in the third division, and they've got to think, right, we're the home team. We've got to use that.
They have Lincoln away on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Well, Lincoln aren't doing very well, so
it's interesting. It's going to be a real test of mental stability of Parkinson's side because Pompey will be well up for this, and you know, all of their fans come across as proper wankers. So it's going to be a real hotbed, and if we can if we can sort of keep our heads together and try and keep it tight and get something out of that game, oh man, that is a massive boost. This is much bigger than beating off the League One sides below us.
Somewhere,
sorry for using the term beating off there.
It's all right. It's all right. No. Hey, look, you got the point across. Somewhere though, David, if I can just paint you a little mental picture, somewhere in Portsmouth on the Saturday morning, there'll be two men staring at like a black abyss, and then suddenly there's like a metallic click and then like a large scraping noise. And then suddenly the sunlight is cast upon the eyes of those two people, like light of day is thrown upon them. That bloke who kicked 09 suddenly looks out of his cage and blinks stupidly at the world around him, knowing that he now has his chance again.
To kick Luke 09.
To kick Luke 09, yeah. And that bloke as well with the funny hair. He can be there in the background.
I can guarantee that bloke will have the same tracksuit on as well.
That's
That's his match tracksuit.
I'm sure he can't
He
wait.
definitely does have like a match day tracksuit.
Yeah,
like,
it's his court tracksuit.
either that or he has a singular tracksuit that he wears for all occasions.
Matches in court. That's when he wears it.
Yeah.
I made a very amateur mistake, and we always ask for the match day predictions, and I forgot to ask what you think our score will be against Tranmere and the goal scorers. So we'll go back to that quickly. Goal scorers and the score.
Tranmere, 3-0. I'm going to go with Lafferty, Gooch, and 09.
Right, David.
I think it's going to be 1-0 with Gooch scoring.
My little boy Jude here being very quiet. He said 3-0. Maguire first goal, 09, and I'm going to say Lafferty to get his first one. Yeah.
Lafferty hat-trick. That's what I'm going to say. Let's just try something ridiculous. Okay, 3-0 Sunderland, Lafferty hat-trick. There we go. Okay. So
Lafferty's going to be great. I'll play him against Portsmouth.
It's
It's
That's
epic
what I
shit
mean.
house
These
time,
big
isn't
games
it?
coming up, he loves that kind of
He's an absolute
atmosphere,
bugger. He's like we'll play Maguire for the same reason because
yeah.
Maguire like heckled him to bits about their like terrible atmosphere last season.
Yeah.
And I think Lafferty would also relish that opportunity. So yeah.
Interestingly as well, I always look into this at this stage of the season. On Tuesday, kind of Fleetwood play Coventry. I think Rotherham play Ipswich. So Wickham play someone up there. So everyone's going to drop points again. So if we do get a win on Wednesday, we're going to be in a really good place.
Absolutely.
Weekend.
And then, as I say, Pompey away. What is the predictions, goal scorers for this game?
You know what? I'm gonna fancy us to win that one. I think these if we get 6 points here, that's a League One 12-pointer. These two games, I think it's that big.
Yeah.
Just for the same reason that Neil just said there, for the aforementioned. I think everyone's going to drop points, and if we're one of those teams picking them up in the top, then it's going to skyrocket us, especially off the back of a Tranmere win, which I think is very likely. But anyway, to Portsmouth, I think we'll win 2-1. I think we'll concede. I think we might concede first, but I think we'll pull it back. I think we'll concede in the first half through that sort of pressing game that we talked about earlier being the downfall of us. But I think because we have a very good sort of like ethos and a very good fundamental sort of like solidarity in this team, I think they'll pull it back. I think we'll win 2-1. And I think Maguire's going to score them both. And I think they're both going to be set pieces as well.
I will go for 2-1 as well, and I think one of them will be scored by Max Power, and I just would love to see the reaction of Max Power giving it the big one, as George Honeyman said to us last year after scoring the winning goal. That's how I'm going to go for it. It's very, very poetic, but I think it would be so good to see that. So Max Power score the winning goal in a 2-1 win. The first goal to be scored by Chris Maguire, yeah. I'd say, yeah. So David?
Yeah, I think it's going to be 1-1, and I think it'll be a Chris Maguire penalty.
Boring.
After which he'll get booked for screaming in the goalkeeper's face because he loves it. He loves it.
Yeah, I'm going to go for. I think it'll benefit us that Portsmouth will kind of attack us, and that'll allow us to get back to this kind of overlapping centre half play that we've got going on, as opposed to Doncaster doing the opposite. So, I think I'm going to go for a 1-0 win. And I'm going to message Sky Bet and see if I can get a price on that guy having the same tracksuit on. And I'll tweet. If I do get a price, I'll tweet that during the week because it's a banger.
Of course, now we've all gone for Sunderland to get 6 points in the next two games, and they all come away with 0.
That David, in fairness, said 4. So
4 points.
He'll get us 1.
I'd be very happy with 4, but let's be honest.
I'd be content with 4, but I think not to be too sort of like. Not to be too, like anal with expectations, but I think we should be going for 6 because I think we need to go for 6.
Yeah.
We're still a team chasing promotion automatically. So given
we seem to be a team on the up, and teams above us seem to be falling away slightly, and I think we need to take advantage of that, and everyone knows that. But will we? I don't know. I think we will. I think we'll get 2 wins in the next 2 games.
This coming fortnight. Because no one has taken the league by the scruff of the neck yet, this fortnight might decide who the chosen one's going to be, which is going to be the team that really goes for the title, which is the team that pulls away like Luton did, because this is around the time Luton did pull away. This is the time that Barnsley sort of followed them up there. This, I think, could be the time where the form team with, strength in depth and a really good plan A to B and C makes itself known. You know, maybe they won't win every game, you know, with sort of like flawless precision and like a deft ability, but this is the time now for the team that knows how to win games week in, week out shows itself. And I think if we need to make that team us, then we have to go out there. We need to give Portsmouth a good hiding.
Yeah, and hopefully next week we will be back with 2 wonderful results. Hopefully 2 wins of came to Sunderland, or 1 win in a draw. That would be nice as well. But that's just about it for today's Roker Rapport podcast. Thank you for David coming in.
It's all right. Can I plug me show that's on this week in Sunderland?
Absolutely can, yes.
Upstairs at the ISIS in the Vaux room, I'm doing my new sort of comedy theatre thing that's called Everything That's Me Is Falling Apart. It's £3 in advance, £5 on the door, 8 o'clock on Thursday night. And if you like Daniel Kitson and Josie Long and sort of alternative fringe theatre, I've been working on it for about a year. It's really good. So please come.
I already said Dan Kitson there. I was thinking of that ex-Redden striker.
Yeah, I've got Ricardo Fuller coming on at the end.
Ishmael Miller. How many more?
Let's see, Kenman Jones. That'll be all right.
No, we're naming bad Premier League strikers.
Right. Okay, Seymour Sidibe. Who else? We'll go through all the Stoke strikers, all the worst ones.
Pretty much.
Thank you for joining us as well, Neil.
Thank you very much. I've always wanted to say, can I plug something? So I'm going to plug something. I'm just trying to sell my house. I've tweeted about it this morning. So you can find the link there. Go for it after a quick sale.
Okay.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Alex?
Yeah, I've got nothing to plug, so that's something, isn't it? Yeah. It's nice. It was nice to be here. I'm not going to lie. In the brief time I was sort of like pondering there, I was thinking of a funny joke to follow up Neil's with, but like I can't keep the irony going. So if anyone has got any recommendations on where I can learn to be funny or anything, then that's my plug.
Actually,
Me too.
No,
sorry, that's yeah. Well, maybe we can go to the same. Maybe that's for both of us then. But no. But yeah, that's not a plug. That's a request. Maybe even a cry for help.
We'll try to help you out the best we can, Alex.
Yeah, thanks,
In
Johnny.
any way that we can. I've got nothing to plug either right now. So, yeah, well, thank you very well. Actually, I plug Sunderland University. Thank you for letting us use your studio to record the Roker Rapport podcast every week. And this one should be available to you very, very soon. Wherever you're listening, thank you for listening. As always, thank you for your support. And you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, Spotify,
YouTube,
YouTube, Podcast Addict is where I listen to it. All the podcasts in the world are on there. It's a fantastic app. But yes, thank you.
Bye.